Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamualaikum and a very warm welcome to World This Morning. I am your host Hajra Sati, and joining me is my wonderful co-host who also happens to be my mentor here, Fahim Bangesh. Assalamualaikum Fahim. Juma Mubarak to you and everyone out there. How are you doing today?
Walaikum assalam. Very well, thank you, alhamdulillah. And yes, Juma Mubarak to you too as well.
Yes.
And yes, quite a blessed day. And today I was going out of my house and I was feeling that crispness in the air, which is finally here.
Okay.
And was enjoying myself while coming to the office with a bright sunny morning. And it really elevates your mood when this sort of weather comes in. And having said that, definitely things are going on, and we know that October every year is considered to be a very important month every year. And why is that, Hajra?
I think there are lots of reasons and we will certainly talk about it, but before we move on to those specific and particular reasons, this thought just propped up in my mind, and Fahim, I would also like your input because I do feel that this topic is also, you're very passionate about it, which is about the organic food versus the genetically modified food, right? And we've seen, especially in the West, if you go there, especially in America, so it's an overly capitalist society, and you will find that there are so many chemicals. I remember when I went to US, I would find the strawberry there 24/7 all months of the years, right? But in Pakistan, you will find that the strawberry has a particular season, and a strawberry does not survive beyond 2-3 days, and after that, 50% of that gets rotten because it's a very sensitive sort of a fruit, right?
And besides that, Hajra, I think our fruits are more aromatic in nature, and in the West, you don't find that.
That's very true, and the land is very fertile, and you will find a lot of organic food, and I think this is something as a Pakistani that we take for granted a lot, that we have access to organic food. Obviously, if you do your own research and if you do your own homework, you can always find desi atta, chakki ka atta, right? And it's very pure, it's homegrown, the brown atta or the brown wheat, whatever you call it, but you don't get this liberty, especially if you're traveling abroad as a tourist, or maybe you're going there for your studies or for some other purpose, right? And definitely, being a South Asian, you miss the food a lot here because our food is very aromatic. It's rich in the flavors, it's rich in the spices, it's rich in what do you call it, the tadkas.
Nutrition, not to forget the nutrition value. Because our foods, obviously, they take time to grow. They're not genetically modified. Although some of the foods, even in Pakistan now, are slowly and gradually moving towards that.
Yes, that's
but
true.
Having said that, I think it's one of the greatest blessings that we have today, that even in this era, we can find organic food in our country.
True.
And of course, they say, "Ghar ki murgi dal barabar."
That's very true.
We don't really count that as a blessing.
True.
So,
that's very true, because one of my friends, she got, when she went to US, she moved there for her studies, she got the inflammatory bowel movement, and she couldn't understand the reasons behind it, and then she later came to know, because she was living in the Florida, that the food did not suited her stomach, and it was not an organic food a lot, and she said, whenever I move back to US, my inflammation is really aggravated and it's deteriorated, but whenever I move back to Pakistan, I'm very comfortable as a person here, and this is the disease or condition or whatever you call it, that requires constant changes to your lifestyle if you want to maintain yourself and if you want to maintain a healthy lifestyle. And healthy lifestyle obviously means reverting back to nature, going back to nature, or adopting the nature-based solutions, because we've seen how this very capitalist-based society, how this materialism is badly affecting us, not just in the food or in the culinary department, but across all the aspects of the life in the first place.
Of course.
Right?
And well, we will be talking more about health, because October is related to health, and we will be talking about that. But first, I think we're going to take a look at the top stories for today. And well, caretaker Prime Minister Anwarul Haq Kakar has urged the world to step forward and help developing countries like Pakistan to cope up with the adverse effects of climate change. He said this while inaugurating the National Emergencies Operations Centre in Islamabad. Also, the Prime Minister lauded the establishment of NEOC that will be helping in coordinated efforts to not only manage the natural disasters in the future, but will also help in disaster risk reduction and mitigation of damages. Also, the Prime Minister maintained that the NEOC will be serving as a hub of all technological inputs related to climate change, disaster management and predictive modelling for national emergencies.
And I think this is obviously the need of the hour, that we need to be more proactive when it comes to the climate crisis, because Pakistan is certainly facing the one, and it is not going to end any sooner, because it requires a comprehensive, a holistic efforts on the part of the humanity, not just within the Pakistan.
It's become part of our lives now.
Of course, of course. So now moving on to another top story, which is the much anticipated moment for Pakistan cricket fans arrives today as Pakistan begin ICC Men's Cricket World Cup 2023 campaign against the Netherlands at Hyderabad's Rajiv Gandhi International Cricket Stadium. PTV Sports HD will telecast the match live from 1:30 p.m. Best of luck to Pakistani team. Of course, there's no pressure of winning. The game is designed in a way that one team is going to lose and another team is going to win. But when it comes to cricket, of course, being
really
Pakistani,
hard, no pressure.
Being Pakistani, there are lots of emotions involved, right? But once again, you know, best of luck to Pakistani cricket team with no pressure, of course, at all. But now,
as you say, Haj.
Yes, yes. But now moving, like Fahim alluded to the fact that October is a month which is related to the health. Obviously, it is the Breast Cancer Awareness Month. It is also known as the Pinktober. And according to, I would like to share some facts and figures and statistics. According to United Nations report, in 2020, 2.3 million women were diagnosed of the breast cancer, and 6,85,000 deaths were reported globally because of this cancer, and that makes it the most prevalent cancer across the entire spectrum of epidemiology. And obviously we are going to talk more about it, whether it's limited just to the women or men should also be particular about their health in terms of having a diagnosis and scanning of the breast cancer awareness. And obviously whenever it comes to the sexuality of a woman, it's always a taboo subject, and how can we make it de-tabooize, I would say it, and make the awareness more. So without any further ado, Fahim, why don't you take the honors and introduce a worthy guest who are going to talk about this topic?
Of course, today in the panel members, we have two doctors. Obviously, that's the best choice that we could have, calling in doctors to talk about this particular topic. We have Associate Professor Surgery, Dr. Saira Mahmood. She works at Maroof International Hospital. Dr. Saira, welcome to PTV World.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum. Thank you for having me. I'm really honored to be part of this panel today.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Looking forward to conversation.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Wonderful. And I'm really glad that you're wearing pink and you are actually promoting it in very symbolic significance, not just the talking about it, but joining Dr. Saira Mahmood. We're very glad that we have also been joined by the presence of Dr. Munazza Aziz. She happens to be a breast cancer surgeon, and she is currently at the Akbar Khan Niazi Teaching Hospital. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saiba, and thank you so much for coming to our show.
Thank you so much for inviting me over.
Wonderful.
Now, moving on with our discussion for today, like Hajra mentioned, that this is one of the most common cancers globally. Now, first of all, when we talk about it, there are two sorts of things, because I've come across this term, whether it's a benign or a carcinogenic sort of a lump. Right.
Okay.
So they also say that you should always, do a self-examination when it comes to this, and it should be done on a very regular basis. Now, two of my questions here are, A, they also speak about mammography, the scanning, right? What is the minimum age that the scanning should be started, A? And B, when you start self-examination, could you also give some details about the self-examination too, so that since we're talking about awareness here, so people should be knowing exactly what to look for.
Just to add on to your thing, like you said, such a common cancer, and we need to know. So mammogram, actually when this campaign started in 1985, that was to promote mammogram, because mammogram is one thing that screens, that shows us cancer when it is not even apparent. So it begins at age 40 according to Americans, and Britishers say at age 50, right? So, we recommend actually at 40 years, and then you start it every year. And your second question was, sorry, your second question was that you said, what did you say?
The details of the self-examination,
yeah, of
because
course.
you need
right.
to, yeah.
So, breast self-examination is a very important part, though there are some controversy. Some people say if you examine your breast every month, you might, get unduly worried. But when we talk about breast cancer, it is better to be worried instead of just, relaxing and doing nothing about it.
Right. And
so,
sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
So, breast self-examination should be done every month in women of reproductive age after they finish their menses. When they stand in front of mirror, they should take off their shirt. Do you want me to explain it all? Okay.
No, because why I was looking forward to the explanation, because sometimes there is a benign fibroadenoma and
Yes.
sometimes there is a proper lump. So what's
Right.
the difference between the two?
Okay.
How can people differentiate?
So basically, people shouldn't be differentiating. They should go to a doctor for that.
Right.
But if you have fibroadenomas are basically very smooth, mobile lumps, and cancers generally present as hard lumps. But having said, if somebody has a lump or a nipple discharge or any abnormality in their breast, like puckering of, indrawing of the skin, or they have an axillary lump, they should go to a doctor immediately.
Right.
That is what I want to say.
Right. So, Dr. Manazza, we will move on to you. And obviously, you are a doctor, and you must be interacting with lots of patients every day who come to your clinic or hospital, and about this particular disease. But whenever the name of cancer is evoked, so there's such a horrific imagery which comes around, and the first thing which comes around is that, oh my God, that person is going to die, or I am going to die.
True.
And how it has been depicted in the pop culture, in dramas, in the movies across, you would find that the person is diagnosed with it, and after some years he passed away, or after some months. So whether it's a disease that can get fatal, and if it is timely diagnosed, it can be cured. So what sort of support would you recommend to the patients who are diagnosed with it?
Okay, first of all, Haja, we need to debunk the myth that cancer is going to be fatal in every case. Because cancer has multiple stages.
Okay.
If you talk about the breast cancer, that has 4 stages. And the transition from the stage 1 to stage 4 is not within a few weeks. That usually takes a period of months or
Right.
sometimes years. So we need to be aware that there is a time window in which you intervene and you take the appropriate treatment. The cancer can be eradicated completely.
Right.
There are still chances of it coming back and having the recurrence of it after a few years, but still that has a proper protocol defined, and
Right.
it can be basically cured completely in most of the women. Now, with the raising awareness campaigns, people know what are the symptoms and they have to go to a doctor basically. And what kind of doctor deals with the cancer, we need to be aware of that as well, because the cancer treatment is different from the treatment of the benign diseases. For example, I'll just quote an example that if you have appendicitis or inflammation of the
Right.
appendix, you go to a surgeon,
Right.
he removes the appendix, and usually the disease is over.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you have a cancer in any part of the body, that needs a detailed treatment. The first important thing is the diagnosis, which is basically a dilemma in most of the cases. The main problem with the cancers is that it is diagnosed at a later stage.
Right.
The meaning of the later stage term is that it is diagnosed at a point where it has already spread from that specific organ
Other
through the
organ.
blood or through the lymphatics to other parts of the body. So basically the difference in the treatment would lie treating the site of the disease or treating the metastasis or the spread of the disease in the body. So for the cancer treatment, there's usually a team of doctors that works in collaboration. For breast cancer, if you talk about it, first of all, you need to consult a cancer surgeon or basically a surgeon or a properly qualified doctor for it.
Right.
Even in this era, so many females come to us who have been treated by the quacks, and that is such a dilemma.
Yes.
Because even the young females and the females who
Or
could
fake
be
spiritual healers, we often
spiritual
hear one.
healers, yes,
Yeah.
that is
So true.
Yeah.
whenever some female comes to me with an advanced cancer, the first question I usually ask them is what was the reason for all this delay? And usually the reason is either denial,
Right.
either the social taboos, or
Right.
some spiritual healer, or some quacks even.
Yes.
Quacks in the name of doctors, quacks in the name of other kind of medication. So we need to know that for the cancer, you have to go to a specific doctor. For breast
Okay,
cancer,
right.
to a surgeon. And then again, the surgeon is not solely responsible for the treatment of it. there needs to be a radiologist, a pathologist, and an oncologist to be on board, and then there is a combined effort of all these doctors that basically eradicates the cancer completely, and then there is a huge treatment protocol for it. You need to follow all that treatment protocol, but by the end of that, usually the early stage cancers can be completely cured. So
Right,
that is a hope, basically.
And Dr. Saira, like Ma'am and Dr. Saiba was saying that once the mets are formed, they go to the other organs,
Right.
it cannot
Yes.
be treated,
Yes.
right? So, and usually what happens is, it's usually painless in the beginning, one cannot tell.
Yeah.
So how is breast cancer different from the other cancers?
So breast cancer, that is why, you know, like she said, it develops over the time. So in breast cancer, the beauty is early detection saves lives. You have, like you initially pointed out, mammogram, in which when there are no symptoms, it is not apparent. You can detect it and you can cure it. And you know, the thing is actually it is not different than other cancers, basically pathologically,
Right.
except for its ability to be early detected and cured completely. And like we were talking right now, and you know, there are a team of doctors involved in it. So sometimes a tumor which is very small, it may just need removal of that tumor only, and then, but after that, you need to actually give radiotherapy to the whole breast. So
Because
it
they
is-
say there's a
Yeah.
huge chance of recurrence every time.
You all are so well informed, you know, like I'm really impressed. So, because, you know, we have to educate our patients that, you know, sometimes the doctor tells you that, you know, we have removed the tumor, now you have to go have radiotherapy. And I've had few cases who presented initially very early,
Right.
but later on they just did not follow up with radiotherapy because, you know, their relatives said that, you know, with radiotherapy you would have some problems with your breathing and, you know, skin discoloration and so forth. So they later on presented with, you know, fully blown metastatic cancer. So it is so important to follow through the treatment plan.
And also some people confuse radiotherapy with chemotherapy.
Yeah, that is different, but sometimes chemotherapy is also advised, like there's a whole protocol.
Right.
So, you know, even with chemotherapy, if you see that losing your hair is important or gaining few more years, because at the end of the day, we just say that screen detected cancers have 95% survival rate. And also,
see.
yes. So, you know, if somebody who's not had a cancer otherwise and, you know, it is detected through screening, so maybe they will not even have chemotherapy, but radiotherapy will of course always be there. It
Right.
is
I
never
see.
that.
Right. So, Dr. Muneza, coming back to you, since you talked about breast cancers and how to detect it, but if someone has a genetic disposition or is at a risk of contracting the breast cancer, so how can that person lower the risk of getting the breast cancer? What sort of life changes do you recommend as a doctor and especially as a specialist in the field?
Basically, first of all, we need to know that all the breast cancers that we diagnose, 85% are usually without any prior family history or genetic predisposition.
Okay.
Only 15% of them occur in the patients who have had a relative and usually a first degree relative with a breast cancer.
Okay.
So first of all, again, the knowledge and the awareness of the fact that if you have a family member, ideally the screening and the examination that should be started earlier on. As Ma'am already mentioned, that we start the screening with the mammography. Mammography is basically a very useful screening tool for all the females above 40 years of age. But if someone has a family history, for example, if someone's mother or sister or any first degree relative had a breast cancer or she died of a breast cancer, then that particular female needs to be screened at an earlier age.
Right.
We will start the screening at an earlier age group and she needs to be more conscious about it.
Right.
So first step would be again the self-examination.
Right.
The other step would be to start the screening and to start seeing a doctor at an earlier age group. And in some cases, if the females are less than 40 years of age, in some particular cases, we usually advise annual screening with MRI as well.
Okay.
Along with that, some genetic studies are available which can identify your risk of having the breast cancer. So basically, just to know that you have a risk is enough to diagnose it at an earlier stage. And again, is if it is picked up at a stage at which it is only available, it is not palpable, and it can be only seen on the mammographic images, then it can be completely cured.
Right. So, Dr. Saira, since we talked about the breast cancer and how there needs to be an early detection and that can save a lot of lives, right? But when we talk about the breast cancer awareness, so there's one particular point that really stands out in my mind, which is about so women who are not into breastfeeding are at the more risk of contracting that particular disease, right? But then there's a lot of debate nowadays on breastfeeding versus the formula milk, right? So, as a doctor, what do you recommend? And obviously, there's a lot of pressure on the young mothers of breastfeeding. So, as a doctor, how would you, talk about this particular issue?
So, you know, actually breastfeeding is actually one protective factor.
Okay.
You cannot modify your being a female or being an older age group in which this cancer is more common.
Right.
But what you can, like, you know, breast, however, having said that because there's also a myth going on in our part of country that when patients present to me, they say, oh, I don't have any family history of breast cancer. I fed all my children.
Okay.
So this lump or this whatever problem they may have cannot be breast cancer.
Okay.
So you see that breastfeeding is definitely protective, like, and it should be promoted.
Right.
That's why you see, I think some pediatricians nowadays we don't get formula milk ads, which used to happen very frequently before, because
They
nothing
encourage
can beat
the
mother's
feeding, yes.
mother's milk for children, but also it gives a protective element to mother too.
Right.
I would of course 100% say that people should breastfeed, and they can also pump their, you know, in America it's very common, people preserve their milk in the bottles and the children can be fed with that.
True.
So
True.
this is mother's milk which is being fed by the bottle.
Right.
If she's working, she's not there all the time. Like she said, there's an enormous social pressure to mother also.
Yes, of course. Of course.
So I think that helps that way.
And Dr. Munazale, since we're talking about cancer here, whenever somebody hears this term, it's quite traumatic, especially for the person who's going through it. Because it happened to a person in my family, and half of the motivation to survive is gone when you hear the diagnosis. So, I mean, regardless of the fact that the prognosis might be good, they lose their motivation, right? So what about, you mentioned that 3 doctors have to be taken under consideration. That's a radiologist and a pathologist and an oncologist, right? What about psychiatric care along with that?
That is another part of the team, and that is a very integral and important part, because as you said that if the patient loses the motivation, he or she is not going to start the treatment or just going to quit midway. As ma'am already said that some of the patients, they come for the surgery, but they get the surgery done and they think that it's over. Now, especially for the females, especially in this area of the world where there's a lot of social pressure, she's working, she's mother, she's a daughter, she has responsibilities at home. So there's a lot of pressure, there are a lot of financial constraints as well. So knowing that there is a team of doctors who can take care of her, especially a psychiatrist for the initial stages, during the treatment, and especially after the treatment for the breast cancer, because the surgery that is being done for the breast cancers usually is very depressing and very emotionally constraining for the females as well, because in this particular cancer the female loses her identity somewhat.
That's true.
Yes.
She loses her confidence, she loses the confidence to face a society again. So psychiatrist is an important and integral part of it, and throughout the treatment we make sure that the patient sees a psychiatrist and does not lose that hope of surviving and coming back to the society as she was before. She's the same person as she was before. So rehabilitation phase, treatment phase, and diagnosis, throughout that we have a psychiatrist with us.
Right, right. So Dr. Saira, Fahim mentioned a very important point, which was about the support, the psychological support which a patient requires. And Dr. Munaz also talked about how there's a radical restructuring of the identity which is going on. Obviously, you lose weight. Chemo is not an easy process. You lose your hairs, and then the entire identity shifts. But in such sort of conditions, or maybe it can be a terminal disease, depending upon what stage it is, right? So how would you recommend the support? Because in the West, there's a concept of support groups a lot,
Support
right?
groups,
We were also thinking of we should start a support group like cancer survivors, you know. So because, you know, you get motivation by being a part of that group, right?
Yes.
And secondly, a psychologist is also very important for maybe the whole family, because sometimes family also needs counseling.
That's true. That's
So,
true.
you know, it's
Especially if
not the
mother is
patient
rejected.
only.
Yes.
And then we also, as you know, it's so important that everybody should be behind that patient. You know, that patient should not be considered a taboo thing, that, you know, because you need support of the whole family at this particular time. And sometimes family may not, husbands also may not find it easy.
Right.
But in my experience, I've seen husbands standing with their wives. So, you know, I would say that.
And how do you deal with the patients who come into your clinic or into your hospital?
So, you know, for me, I also work at a kind of semi-public hospital, Rawal Institute of Health Sciences. So, I see a lot of women who are not so educated or well aware of. In Maruf, I get a very educated kind of background of patients.
Sure.
So, I always make sure that I give them detailed explanation. And you know, I have said that if you find in our practice, we always consider a lump in a woman older as breast cancer unless proved otherwise, or any symptom.
Okay.
So you have to reassure that patient, first of all, like initially it was mentioned, that breast cancer or any cancer is such an overwhelming diagnosis. So first you have to give hope to that patient, you know, because I think a doctor, when a patient comes to a doctor, there is some connection.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
So if a doctor, it's your initial doctor who can bring up that hope in you.
That's
so
true.
that is what I would recommend all doctors to do, because another patient who was a cancer survivor, she told me that her doctor, which was not a surgeon, any guy, and another doctor, they got so angry at her that why have you come so late? So, you know, if a patient is of course late, sometimes doctors do get upset, but basically hope you give, and you tell them, explain it very nicely, what are we going to do about it?
Right.
What are the steps which are going to be taken?
And also, since you were mentioning a semi-government hospital, and I'm right now talking about complete government hospitals where usually we don't see a very good informational care with the patient, where we don't usually see that support which is to be given from the doctor to the patient, and usually we see people from the rural centers coming in complete government hospitals, and that's where it becomes really sad, because when a woman gets a hysterectomy done or mastectomy done, that really gets difficult for that particular woman to actually survive even after having been treated.
That's true, you're right. So this needs to be addressed, and I think this should be part of, in fact, our College of Physicians and Surgeons are really now concentrating on communication skills and things like that. So I'm hopeful that, you know, younger doctors are being more, you know, being more conscious about distributing the knowledge and about being there for the patient, but basically there's also a lot of workload in government hospitals.
That's true.
So,
that's true.
but these are kinds of hospitals, they are, you know, they are also providing service to the poorer people.
Dr. Manaza, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, I just want to add that keeping in mind all these factors, that such women especially, they need special care and a special environment. Because whenever if you ever have the experience of going to a government hospital, there's usually a long queues in the OPD and even the long waiting list for the surgeries. So keeping in mind this particular need for the breast cancer patients, we at our setup have established a one-stop breast clinic. That is basically a concept that is very much prevalent in the West and is getting common in Pakistan as well. So the concept behind this one-stop breast clinic is that the patient gets all kind of support and treatment modalities at a same place in a specialized privacy environment where her needs and special needs are being catered to. So basically what happens in a one-stop breast clinic is that after initial assessment by a surgeon, usually we make sure that the patient gets their needed imaging facilities like the mammography, the ultrasound, or if we need a biopsy, that is usually done in the same setting. And even if we need a psychiatrist or an oncologist on board, that is usually done in that specialized and a separate clinic as well.
Right.
So basically that helps to cut short the time for diagnosis and treatment, and that gives the patient the security and the feeling that she is being taken care of in a special environment. So in my setup in the last 1 year, we have seen that the patients are giving a very much positive feedback. They don't have to wait in the queues. They don't have to go to a male doctor initially to get diagnosed for it. And they're very comfortable in communicating with us.
That
So
is
that
what's
is very
happening
effective.
in most private hospital setup. Like in our also setup, we have got this one-stop clinic.
Right.
But in government setups, there is some you
a
know,
gap which
There's a
needs
huge,
to be.
But
yes.
they're also
They need to
working
come
on
up
that.
with
Yeah.
that, of course. Dr. Manaza, again, coming back to you, so there's lots of conversation and discourses around the breast cancer awareness. You will see in the movies, in the pop culture, they are talking about it. And Pink October or Pinktober is celebrated every year with lots of campaigns, and our First Lady is also very active promoting
Yes.
this cause. But what sort of conversations do you think we need to have when we talk about the breast cancer awareness as a doctor, as a specialist in this field, and what next that we should approach in this particular awareness campaign?
So, one very important aspect of it is that when we arrange the sessions or when we go to a particular group and educate them, that are usually the females that are being educated. So, education of the males about this cancer is
Yes.
equally important, because they will be the first person at home the female is going to complain about it. They are the person who is responsible for taking that patient to the hospital,
Exactly.
and then to stand by the female throughout that procedure. Because as Madam already said, that counseling the husband or the male member of the family is equally important as counseling the female members.
Yes.
So basically that is
And
the
removing
awareness
that
of the
taboo.
males.
Yeah.
So I think that should be a topic of discussion in the male offices as well. The male groups should encourage that as well, because whenever that topic comes, still in our villages and even in the cities, that is a taboo. The men cannot talk about it much.
That's true.
So
Because
the men need to be
I'm
educated.
really sorry to interrupt, because even in the urban centers, when a breast cancer awareness campaign or a workshop or a seminar is held,
Right.
okay, this is for women. You know, that's the
Yes.
common perception.
That's so true.
Yeah.
You're right.
So educating the males, I think that's a
That is
very
very
pertinent
important
That's very
step
point.
of it.
important.
Because even when we are planning the surgery for the breast cancer, as we already mentioned, that the surgery is usually very distressful for the patient.
Right.
And most of the females, they do not give consent for the surgery, saying that the husband is not willing for it. So this is again a taboo. The husband is not, because in our society, sometimes the males think they have a control over the females.
Right.
So
Well, not sometimes.
Majority of the
the
time.
time.
So
That's
in my practice, I make sure that I counsel the husband as well.
Right.
I call them in my clinic. I make them sit with the female and
Lovely.
tell them through all the disease process. Because if the wife is
Important.
going to lose the hair through the chemotherapy, she's
Yes.
going to be sick. She's not going to be taking care of the family
Right.
like she
Yeah.
used to do it before.
Right.
Then the main next support would be from the husband
From the
side.
husband.
That's
True.
So what needs to be talked about in these awareness campaign is the participation of the male members.
That's
Participation
true.
of
And
the whole family. yeah.
Dr. Saira, one last question before we
Yes.
wrap up this segment, which is about, since you are dealing with this particular issue, and I'm pretty sure droves of people turn to your clinic or hospital
Yes,
for
that's
that.
true.
So which particular demographic group in Pakistan is more vulnerable? Obviously, women are vulnerable, and we have seen that there's lots of gender discussion that we were having about how it particularly disproportionately affects women.
Right.
Are men also at the risk of contracting this particular cancer? And do you want to talk about, which particular group is more vulnerable to the contracting this
So,
disease?
in men, 0.5% of males can present with breast cancer,
Okay,
right?
Okay.
So, the group that is, in males, you do not have a certain thing that, males who may have had gynecomastia, they may be prone, or people who are taking estrogen. Initially, they used to take estrogens for prostate cancer and things like that. They were vulnerable, but right now, if somebody's had a family history of females who are who've had breast
Right.
cancers, because in my recent practice, I had this male and his mother and his aunt, they all had breast cancers. And he also presented with a lump in his underarm,
Right.
in his
I
axilla.
see.
Okay.
So, people who've had breast cancer history in their females, they can be a bit more, but like in females, we say screening and we say breast self-examination, which you talked about. In males, because there's so less, only 0.5% of all breast cancers present in males, so we do not have a screening thing for them.
Okay.
But you raised a very important
Right.
and pertinent thing, that all males should also be conscious of it, because they can also have it.
contract this
Right?
disease. Right.
True, and that's something really shocking for me because I wasn't really expecting that. Yeah.
Yes, yes, and thank you
Yes,
so much, Dr. Saira.
thank you.
So much, Dr. Munazza, for coming here and for having this wonderful conversation regarding raising the awareness on the breast cancer. And obviously, it's one of the most prevalent disease, and one of the reason why so many women are reluctant and hesitant to go out and get themselves checked up is the issue of sexuality of the woman, and it's always considered to be a taboo subject. But I think that nothing comes before your health, because if you are living, if you are healthy, then you are able to function well, right? So make sure there are lots of procedures, and there's lots of conversations on the social media that if you have some lump, go and get it diagnosis, because early treatment is always helpful and can save your life. So with that, we will wrap up this segment, and after the short break, we are going to have some interesting discussions. So don't go everywhere. Juma Mubarak.
Welcome back to World This Morning with Hajra Sati and Fahim Bangush. And as after having a very productive discussion and informative discussion about breast cancer, as we know, this is the Breast Cancer Awareness Month, the Pinktober, and the theme of which is Pink Together, Stronger Forever. So I think all of the people should join together and celebrate and observe this month as the Awareness Month. Because that's pretty important.
That's very true, and apart from being Pinktober, it's also the month of Rabiul Awwal, and it also happens to be Juma, and obviously we are very well connected with our Islamic values, Islamic roots. But Fahim, I wanted to ask you some questions, and since you will see across the world that there is this wave where people are talking about being more modernizing or getting more modern. So do you think when we try to declassify or dehyphenate the religion from the modernity, this is where the rot lies, or this is where you see
that? This is actually where the rot lies, because modern is a concept which is the most misconceived, misperceived concept. The modernity is right here, it's not in your clothes.
That's very true, that's very true. Yeah. And we see that because we are moving away from our roots, we are forgetting the particular, I would say, the centrality of the message, which was always rooted in the religion, and we would see that is why we see there are lots of problems which are taking rise across the world, right? So you will find that people are living more, I would say, they're more rich in terms of having the value, in terms of having the capital. They are making billions of dollars, but the contentment is not there.
Contentment is not there. It's always absent.
Because contentment always lies in the zikr, right, in the remembrance of God, and this is really where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that your contentment of the heart lies in the zikr, in my remembrance. And Fahim, I was looking at a research that was carried out at the Oxford University, and it mentioned that and they took this a focus group discussion, especially with 50 or 60 children. I'm forgetting the exact number of, I think it was 500 or 600 children, and their brain is more predisposed towards the concept of accepting the God. Why? Because we are made in the image of God, in the image of Fitra, and we would see that is how we are more closer to Allah. And Allah says in the Quran that I am near to your jugular vein in the first place.
That's true. And well, since we're talking about remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and remembrance of His Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I think it would be a very good idea to hear and listen to a beautiful naat, since we have in the studios हाफिज़ ज़ीशान साक़ी साहब, अस्सलाम वालेकुम। हम चाहेंगे कि हम भी और हमारी ऑडियंस भी एक बहुत खूबसूरत सी नात आप पढ़ दें।
जी बिस्मिल्लाह। कोई سلیقہ ہے آرزو کا، کوئی سلیقہ ہے آرزو کا، نہ بندگی میری بندگی ہے، یہ سب تمہارا کرم ہے آقا، یہ سب تمہارا کرم ہے آقا، کہ بات اب تک بنی ہوئی ہے، یہ سب تمہارا کرم ہے آقا۔ اور کسی کا احسان کیوں اٹھائے، کسی کو حالات کیوں بتائے، کسی کا احسان کیوں اٹھائے، کسی کو حالات کیوں بتائیں، تمہیں سے مانگیں گے تم ہی دو گے، تمہیں سے مانگیں گے تم ہی دو گے، آقا تمہارے در سے ہی لو لگی ہے، یہ سب تمہارا کرم ہے آقا۔ اور بشیر کہیے نذیر کہیے، انہیں سراج منیر کہیے، بشیر کہیے نذیر کہیے، انہیں سراج منیر کہیے، جو سر بسر ہے کلام ربی، جو سر بسر ہے کلام ربی، وہ میرے آقا کی زندگی ہے، یہ سب تمہارا کرم ہے آقا۔ اور عمل کی میرے اساس کیا ہے، بجز ندامت کے پاس کیا ہے، عمل کی میرے اساس کیا ہے، بجز ندامت کے پاس کیا ہے، رہے سلامت تمہاری نسبت، رہے سلامت تمہاری نسبت، میرا تو ایک آسرا یہی ہے، یہ سب تمہارا کرم ہے آقا۔